Hello, and welcome to episode 198 of the How to Survive podcast. My name is Chris, and this week it's an all-time classic horror comedy at its peak and a film about removing heads or destroying brains. Shaun of the Dead. Speaking of destroyed brains, Joe Sherville joins me.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Very well, mate. It seems like months since we've recorded.
It has been a while, hasn't it? It certainly feels that way. But it's not about you and me, Joe. This is about survival.
Yeah.
And if you haven't listened to How to Survive before, it's a podcast about horror movies where we discuss the film and how we would survive in it. If you haven't seen Shaun of the Dead, you've had exactly 15 years in which to do so. So if you haven't seen it, I'd really recommend you run off and go and watch it. We've had a few emails asking for spoiler-free thoughts about the films that we watched, Joe. Shaun of the Dead is a classic, isn't it? It's an absolute masterpiece. It's available on Netflix in the UK. Yeah. So if you have not had the joy of watching Shaun of the Dead, now is your chance to do so before we spoil it rotten. And without further ado, let's go on with the plot recap. How about that for a slice of fried gold?
What's that? Fried gold?
That's what they say in the film.
When?
Like multiple times. Every time they make a plan, he goes, "How about that for a slice of fried gold?"
Fried gold?
Yeah.
I've never heard that in my entire life. I must have seen that film like 700 times. I've never heard anyone say that.
How's that for a slice of fried gold? Yeah, boy!
What are you making things up for?
I'm keeping it away.
Do you ever think that modern life is not for you? Do you do the same dead-end job every day? Is your love life dying on its feet?
To a wonderful mum.
Have you ever felt that you're turning into
It's the end of the world.
a zombie? Maybe you're not alone.
Pisshead.
Although no one official is prepared to comment, religious groups are calling it Judgment Day.
It is vital that you stay in your homes. Avoid all physical contact with the assailants.
So, what's the plan? Bash him in the head, that seems to work out. Why have we got to go to Lizzie's? Because I love her. All right, okay. Do something! Right there. Hold it there. I'm coming! Here they come!
Shaun has a heart-to-heart with his girlfriend Liz, who is frustrated at his lack of ambition and lazy attitude.
You've been there, haven't you?
These traits are exacerbated by his best friend Joe Sherville, who brings out the worst in Chris. He agrees, his best friend's called Ed. Shaun agrees to a dinner date with Liz at the place with all the fish, but forgets to make a booking. He's distracted by phone calls from his mum and by ongoing reports of a mysterious spreading pandemic. Following his failure to book the restaurant, Liz dumps him. Sad Shaun. He drinks away his sadness at the Winchester pub with Ed, and steaming drunk, they fight with their housemate Pete, who has a bite on his hand.
That's fine.
Shaun writes a to-do list for the next day: go round mum's, get Liz back, sort life out, and passes out. The next day, Shaun goes to the corner shop, oblivious to the ongoing downfall of society around him. He returns to find a girl in the garden. He and Ed try to get her to leave, but she falls and is impaled on an umbrella stand. When she gets back up, Ed and Shaun realise she is one of the undead. They go back inside and see a news report telling survivors to remove the head or destroy the brain of their attackers. When one such attacker enters their flat, Ed does just that with an ashtray and says, "Do you see his head go?"
It's good, isn't it? The little asides that make up the script.
One of my favourite lines in any movie ever is when that guy walks in and he's a zombie.
He's got an arm off.
Yeah. And the actual line is, "Oh, for God's sake, he's got an arm off."
That's good.
It's very good. Shaun and Ed deal with the zombies in their garden and formulate a plan to rescue Shaun's mum, kill his stepdad Philip, who has already been bitten, rescue Liz and her flatmates Diane and David, and head to a safe, familiar place, the Winchester. Together, they go round Mum's, get Liz and her flatmates, and are in the process of driving to the Winchester when Philip turns into one of the undead, forcing them to abandon the car. They head through local gardens and, after a minor detour to save Shaun's mum from an elderly assailant, also a zombie, by the way, they make it through a crowd to the Winchester. Shaun leads the crowd of zombies away as a distraction and the rest head inside. David shows his dislike for Shaun, claiming he probably won't return and that they were fools for trusting him, but Shaun shows him up by showing up. After restoring the power, Shaun realises that he was followed back to the pub by the zombie horde despite his best efforts. Ed carelessly starts playing the fruit machine, which triggers a chain reaction of events. David tries to kill the power and ends up signalling the horde via the pub's exterior lights, while Shaun, Ed and Liz put down the pub's landlord, frying the jukebox in the process.
He's got to drive his head into it.
Yeah, that's the amazing Don't Stop Me Now coordinated fight scene.
It's good, isn't it?
It's very good. The horde begin to press against the pub's exterior, so the group find and load the pub's namesake Winchester rifle, but to Shaun's horror, his mum succumbs to a bite sustained in the gardens. She didn't tell anyone as she didn't want them to worry, which is the most mum thing in any film ever.
Yes.
She quickly dies and David heartlessly prepares the rifle to shoot her. After a brief standoff, Shaun puts his mum's reanimated ghoul down before punching David. To the group's horror, he tries to shoot Shaun with the now empty rifle before panicking and eventually apologising for his behaviour. Unfortunately for David, his apology counts for naught as the horde burst through the window behind him and dismember him. Diane loses her composure and dashes out into the crowd and certain death to try and save him, and the undead pour into the pub from every entrance. Ed is bitten by the reanimated Pete, and the pressing numbers force the remaining trio to hide in the pub's cellar. Shaun and Liz rekindle their romance and leave Ed to die with the rifle before returning to the street via the pub's keg lift. As they prepare to fight the horde, the army arrive and rescue them. 6 months later, the remaining undead are put to work in menial labour jobs and as the subjects of humiliating reality TV. Shaun and Liz live together and keep the now undead Ed as a pet in the shed.
Brilliant.
And that was Shaun of the Dead, Joe.
What's wrong with that
is Edgar Wright's first fully fledged feature film, you'd say. I think, discounting A Fistful of Fingers.
Have you seen that?
No, it had a £10,000 budget. Okay. So though it is a feature film, it's, almost like home movie, student film sort of thing. It's co-written with Simon Pegg, following the cult success of their TV show Spaced, and many of the stylistic flourishes in Shaun of the Dead were first seen throughout Spaced. Of course, Shaun of the Dead is the first of the Cornetto trilogy.
Yes.
Along with Hot Fuzz and The World's End.
World's End, a bit of a flat note at the end of it.
Yeah, although it's better than I remembered most recently when the most recent time I watched it. And Shaun of the Dead is beloved by horror fans and George Romero too, which is
George Romero's son. George Romero too.
Oh, very good. Yeah. And Shaun of the Dead obviously stars some of British comedy's leading lights from the early noughties.
Yeah.
What did you think of Shaun of the Dead?
So obviously it's a masterclass in visual storytelling, right? Every single shot is packed with information which is like essential to the plot. It's a very economic way of telling the story, if you know what I mean. Like there's a shot of Bill Nighy walking, which tells you like everything you need to know about the film in that moment, which is Bill Nighy is grumpy and old. There's army lorries speeding past, just like unrecognized by anyone, like and there's a phone ringing in the background, which like is just like increasing the tension in Shaun's life, and it's Liz calling him. Yeah, and it's like it's just masterfully made. It's like it's a joy to watch because you're like, it's just so satisfying when everything just works that way. There's another shot later when they arrive at the mum's house, and you know at that point that Philip has been bitten, and there's just like a bucket and like tipped over, and it's like, well, that explains how he got bitten.
He was outside cleaning his car.
Yeah, because he loves his car. Right?
Yeah,
it's just like little touches like that just make it just so satisfying to watch.
Yeah. Philip says that he's fine because he washed it under a cold tap.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's obviously like one of the darlings of British cinema.
Yeah,
and I'm fairly sure it's renowned around the world as a staple of both horror and comedy. It's been remade in different languages, such as Juan of the Dead in Mexico.
Right.
There's one in Korea as well, which I'm not going to have a go at pronouncing, but it's a variation on Shaun.
Yeah.
Or Dawn. All the characters in it, incredibly relatable. And there's nothing really offensive or upsetting. There's a couple of jokes that have not aged particularly well and are kind of more or less unforgivable in 2019.
Okay.
Like the use of the N-word apropos of nothing.
Yeah.
But
it's the N with the AZ addendum.
Why aren't you saying it?
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
Because it's...
But and also it's from the mouth of a character who is like... is also calling his friends cunts in pubs and things like that. So, yeah. It perhaps is...
a character trait rather
than...
Yeah, the film isn't racist.
No.
It's like...
I think it's knowingly used in an offensive manner, isn't it?
Yes.
In fact, I think... Is it the bit where he pulls up outside Liz's house and leans out the window and says it?
Yeah.
There's actually a reaction shot of Shaun, Liz, David and Diane where their like shoulders sag because they're like upset that he's used that word. Like the immediate shot following him leaning out the car and saying it is Shaun and all of them looking a bit embarrassed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah.
Well, do you think that's the actor's reaction or...
yeah, they're embarrassed
that
it was in the script. Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I think. I think like I must have seen it a dozen times, like so many times, and it holds up so well. It's just a great film.
Yeah, it is. It's an all-time great, absolutely. And it goes without saying that it's directed by a master of visual storytelling, Edgar Wright. And also credit to the editor, Chris Dickens, as well, because it's just packed full of such high-level timing and sound editing throughout. And it's not to evoke the Phantom Menace, but it's so densely packed. It's so rich. Like every frame has so much going on, seemingly.
But in a good way.
Yeah. It's an absolute joy. I watched it this time with subtitles, which I'd really recommend because there's so much detail in background conversations and on radios and things like that. And it makes a lot of the linguistic foreshadowing more apparent. Like literal lines that, for example, this is an obvious one, but Shaun tells Pete repeatedly to leave Ed alone. And then at the end, in the final climax, when...
I told you to leave him alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, but it's like every line has a counterpoint line in the climax.
The one where Liz is telling David something like, we need to stay here and be... Oh, no, you'll give away... You'll advertise we're hiding or something, and then David says the same thing and comes across like a smug.
We don't want to advertise our whereabouts more than we already have.
Right, exactly.
And then two scenes later, David says exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Which is like it's perfect because it tells you everything you need to know about him as well.
Yes, absolutely. I really love that Shaun gets so irate at zombies, and it's not because he finds it offensive or because. He doesn't believe that's what's happening. It's just because it's ridiculous. Yeah. Like it's such a no, come on. It can't be zombies. Don't be ridiculous. And I think it updates and Britishizes all of Dawn of the Dead's politics really effectively.
Yeah.
So at the start, you've got the, shambling workers pushing trolleys at checkouts, sat at bus stops checking their phones, just like disenfranchised walking down alleyways and things, and those are all echoed with later shots as well. Particularly
people meandering around with doing nothing.
Yeah, like the point with Dawn of the Dead is that people are so consumed by capitalism that even in death they'll flock to shopping malls.
Yeah.
And in Dawn of the Dead, it's like people are already zombie, and in Shaun of the Dead, it's like people are already zombies because of how they behave and how disenfranchised with life they are.
Exactly. You got the guy in the bus listening to Zombie Nation. As well.
And obviously all the zombies. The most densely packed scene of zombies is a crowd outside a pub.
Yeah, that's true. Featuring tires from space in costume.
Yeah, exactly. Has he got his bike as well?
It's
something like that. He's doing something that's very like the character.
Michael Smiley in costume.
Yeah.
It's like blink and you miss it sort of thing.
It is. There's a lot of cameos. Adam Buxton and Joe Cornish are in it as well.
Was Adam Buxton the voice on the telephone?
No, he is one of the zombies that gets gunned down at the end by the army.
Nice.
And I think this really gets to the reason why the film works so well. It can sort of be summed up by Penelope Wilton's character as Shaun's mum, because she is magnificent, and it is genuinely gut-wrenching when she dies, resurrects, and then is put down by Shaun. And those scenes are really key to the heart of the film and why it's so successful, I think, because it doesn't shy away from the very real drama and horror of the situation. But with all that said, I think it's more of a romantic comedy than it is a zombie film.
More rom-com than Zom.
Yeah, would you agree? And of course, the tagline, I think, was
romantic comedy with zombies.
Yeah, is it rom-com? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's very straight. I mean, it's a love story. At the heart of the romantic comedy is like so cliche that you can see every beat of it coming 20 minutes in advance. Like 20 minutes before you press press play on the film, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty obvious lead in. But the addition of zombies does make it significantly more interesting and exciting. And I don't know, like for some reason, if I didn't know about Shaun of the Dead and you pitched the idea of a romantic comedy with zombies, I'd be like, sounds rubbish.
Yeah.
Sounds try hard or like 15-year-old boy.
Right.
Like I've said in the past.
It's like films. Scary Movie or Pride and Prejudice and zombies.
Quite. So that's different, right? Have you seen Pride and Prejudice and zombies?
No.
See, that sounds rubbish. Same as Lesbian Vampire Killers. It's just a bit like, oh, we're being
It's
edgy.
it's too arch though, in a way that Shaun of the Dead isn't.
No. Shaun of the Dead is very, I don't know.
It plays the horror straight. Like all the comedy is derived from jokes, right? Rather than it just being something like Scary Movie,
right,
where you're just laughing at the inversion of
tropes.
Yeah, or like literally remaking scenes from films that you've already watched, right? That's not what is happening here. The characters take the film seriously, and so do you as the audience. The jokes come from like
one-liners and
wit and
also
pace.
the very agile and interesting camera work. Like there's lots of reveals and like
the sight gags are fantastic.
So good.
There's one the one brilliant one is when they're all rehearsing to be zombies. Pretend to be zombies, and the ending of that scene is Diane saying, "All right, everybody on 3, 1, 2," and then as she says 3, it cuts to them
doing it.
Like, and that's a brilliant. That's like one example. You could pick a million of them of the style of editing and how much it contributes to the feel of the film.
Yeah, I agree, mate. It is wonderful.
I think also it's got 2 genuinely heartwarming central love stories between Shaun and Liz and Shaun and Ed.
Yeah, right. The love triangle.
Yeah, and also 2 heartbreaking parental relationships
with Shaun and Philip and Shaun and his mother.
Yeah, because Philip and Shaun reach an understanding, and Philip seemingly sort of redeems himself in some ways for being like a cold, archetypal British father.
Yeah, stepfather.
Yeah, because he's saying, I thought you
I
were
wanted to give
already
you someone strong to look up to.
right, exactly, and you were already a man when I met you.
Mm.
After your father died and all that sort of thing. And again, like it very elegantly tells you so much about his character and his relationship to Shaun in just like Bill Nye is probably only in the film for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And yet he's an incredibly memorable.
His first shot where he just like turns around really like suddenly.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Shaun thinks he's dead.
No, earlier than that, when in the shop, because he goes to see Shaun at work.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And he's got his back to it.
Yeah,
and
he spins on place,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. But but the story about like he chased me around the garden with a bit of wood. It's like that's funny.
Yeah.
Like it's a funny thing to look back on.
And it's a very British.
Yeah.
Like those sorts of things are very British to me for some reason.
Do you know the story of? I won't say anyone's names.
Right.
Right, a friend of ours from school.
Yeah.
He once called they were on holiday in Cornwall, and he once phoned up the police because I think he was a child. He was like 10 or something.
Yeah.
And he didn't think the phone worked, and he said that.
He thought the phone didn't work because they were on holiday.
Right, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he told them that his brother had farted, and then hung up.
Yeah.
And then they sent round a fire engine and an ambulance, I think, because they thought that he'd said, "My brother's on fire."
Yeah.
And his father chased him around the garden with a golf club. Apparently.
Yeah. Like it's seemingly a very British thing.
You've been chased with a bludgeon?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a friend who knocked over a mug of my dad's tea and was so scared of him that he ran home.
Really?
And then his parents made him write a letter of apology to my dad.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And also it doesn't sacrifice the horror for the sake of its comedy. All the horror scenes hit with the appropriate amount of horror.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
particularly, David being
it's
torn apart.
It's sort of funny because it's like
because it's so outlandish.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, and then like his head gets ripped off, and you're like, it's just like it goes too far.
Yeah,
and then she's like, it runs out there to save him,
holding his leg.
Yeah.
It's
amazing. Like, but then it's still like horrible to see someone get disemboweled when they're still alive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's
comes from nowhere,
gruesome and violent enough that you can't. I don't think you can just watch it as a funny moment, can you?
No.
I think like a rom-com, the story. The reason that I think that it's more of a romantic comedy than a zombie film is that the zombies, for the most part, are incidental. They obviously remove characters from the story, but the central love story remains intact, and the central story, which is that of Shaun's personal growth, remains intact, and that's really what the film is about, right? The film his character arc is about being in a sort of not really doing anything with his life, late 20s, not committing to anything, and by the end of the film, he has grown by virtue of taking this sort of leadership role, taking responsibility and taking control of his life.
Yeah, that's right. He also takes on like aspects of the people around him, I think.
He also achieves all of his goals for the next day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
We'll go round to mum's, get Liz back.
Sort life out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
He takes sugar in his tea at the end, which he says he hasn't done since 1982.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of that?
I don't know.
Just a nice reflection he's got.
Yeah, maybe. He's treating himself, isn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think this is the best horror comedy ever?
I think it's got to be, isn't it? Next week we're covering another one which has been oft requested by listeners, which is Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And I think that is very funny, but I don't think it has the staying power that Shaun of the Dead has. Yeah. I think because the zombies are incidental to Shaun of the Dead, like you said. I mean, they're not. You couldn't have the movie without them, but they're incidental to the story. Anyone could watch it, and everyone gets it. Yeah. Whereas with something like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, you have to really appreciate hillbilly horror in order to get it, I think.
Okay.
Or to get something out of it. I mean, Shaun of the Dead could be better compared with something like American Werewolf in London, which has very funny elements, but it's still... That's probably more horror than comedy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that so often with films that claim to be horror comedies, one or the other is weak.
Yeah. And I think that that was a horror movie that made jokes, whereas this is a comedy movie that has horror moments.
Yeah.
And I think, Chris, it might be time for the old Joe Sherville horror comedy comparison.
Okay, yeah,
Which,
the long-awaited.
I haven't rattled this out in a while, but my theory, or maybe not a theory, but this is the facts, right? This is the Sherville litmus test for whether it's a horror or comedy.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that jokes and jumps work in the exact same way.
Yeah.
So something may suddenly enter the frame accompanied by a loud noise, and that could be something that makes you jump, or it could be something that makes you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Shaun of the Dead knows, or Edgar Wright and the editing team know exactly how to play with that feeling. So,
Yeah.
for instance, there's a shot where Shaun looks up from the TV, or he hears a noise and looks up and sees Ed like draped under the curtain, which is a really funny image.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes him jump, but it makes you laugh.
Yeah.
Right. And equally, when the wedding guest comes through the front door, like the tension, because you know what's coming, but you know they've left the door open because you can see it in the background, and you know what's going to happen, and it's like really tense. But then there's a good payoff because like he jumps up and says,
"Oh, for God's sake, he's got an arm off."
Right, exactly, which is a funny payoff. Similarly, I think it really understands the horror genre in a way that it can play with it really well. So it makes the horror tropes in a pitch perfect way, but then subverts them at the absolute last second. So, for instance, you know that Shaun is going to run into zombies when he's flapping around in the dark in the pub.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know that's coming because you've seen so many movies like this before. But when he turns on the light and there's like a dozen of them just suddenly lit up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The effect is funny rather than scary. Whereas in another movie with different soundtrack, with different timing, that could have been one of the most scary moments in the film.
Yeah.
When you realise the game's up and that you're surrounded. But his reaction is just to turn the light back off and then pull the blind down, which is like really funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Similar to his reaction when he climbs up the slide and then just climbs back down in silence. They go,
lots.
How many are there?
Lots. Yeah. But I think it all comes down to Simon Pegg's performance.
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of Simon Pegg. I think he's a bit grating at times.
Okay.
But his understated way of playing this is like amazing. Right?
Yeah, he is brilliant.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
In this.
Yeah.
How do you find it? Do you like him in Mission Impossible?
Yeah, don't mind him.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the job, doesn't it? I don't know why.
Well, when you think that the original casting for that role was Ricky Gervais.
Really?
Yeah.
In Mission Impossible?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Why didn't he do it?
I don't know. Maybe someone came.
Cemetery Junction.
Yeah, maybe someone came to their senses.
Fucking hell. Yeah, mate. He's suddenly become the best actor in the world.
Who?
Shaun of the Dead.
All right. Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead.
Simon Pegg.
Martin Freeman would have been good as Shaun of the Dead. He's in it, but
He is in it. He was good for that 1 second.
no lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that is the other mother? Is that Marsha from Space? Right.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So good.
We should contextualize this. There's a scene where Shaun bumps into his ex, I think,
Or an old
or
friend.
like an old friend, old flame, maybe. I can't remember what her name
I
is.
think the implication is that it's Tim and Daisy, and you're meant to go like, I know how they know each
Right,
other.
of course, yeah. So it's played by Jessica Stevenson, I think.
Yeah, right.
Is it Jessica Hines? I think she changed her name when she married.
I think either is acceptable.
And they bump into what is essentially a mirror image of their own film, with equivalent versions of all the characters, each played by another British comedy star. So Tamsin Gregg's there, Matt Lucas is there, Reece Shearsmith is there, and like you say, Marsha from Spaced is there. It's a very clever and fun way of linking those two things. But yeah, I've never thought of it actually as being literally like Tim and Daisy from Spaced, which is their TV show before Shaun of the Dead. Yeah.
Because I think it wasn't that long after Spaced, relatively speaking.
Yeah, it would have been it would have been maybe like 3 years, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So fans of Spaced would be thinking, oh, the Spaced movie.
Yeah.
So I know I was.
So, Joe, as they ask in the film back in 2004, where is safe? Where is familiar? Where can we smoke?
Well, can I light up here?
I'm going to say no.
Why?
because I own this flat and
Mhm.
I would rather that you didn't smoke in it
Why?
because I don't want you to.
But why? But what? You must have a reason.
It's a fire hazard. It's going to make everything in here smell of smoke.
Right. Fire hazard.
Yeah.
I'd say a cigarette is in the right hands is a controlled fire hazard.
Exactly. In the
But-
right hands.
Right, exactly. I'm so clumsy.
Yeah.
My point is smoking is inherently unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a oxymoron, isn't it? The whole-
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's a circular argument.
But it's
maybe?
not. It's saying that it's a safe place where we can smoke, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. I understand. I'm trying to be facetious. It isn't working. I can't come here.
Mm.
I won't smoke in my house. Because
Even in the event of a zombie apocalypse.
same reasons. I don't smoke, so
Yeah.
easily done. Can't smoke in pubs anymore.
No. Can't do anything nowadays, can you?
No.
Can't say you're British. Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? You wouldn't be able to make this film in 2019 because it wouldn't make sense.
Go to the pub to smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with all that said, Joe, how the bloody hell would you survive?
First tip is for everyone in a sense, but it came up. My wife actually said it to me
Mm-hmm.
when Shaun blows his own mother's head off, which is
Yeah.
why don't they just wait, tie her up, and see if there's a cure later on? Seems impulsive because she's not a powerful individual.
Yeah. It's a very emotionally charged situation, isn't it?
But like I've never been in high emotions. Like, oh, my mum's turned into a zombie. Better blow her head off.
Is there a single zombie or infection film where tying up a member of the infected has worked out in the survivor's favour?
Well, they don't know they're in a film,
No, but they're obviously aware of zombie films
right?
because they don't want to use the word zombie.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
I
true.
mean, like, I get what you're saying.
well, he does.
There's
at the
clearly
end, tie
no.
up Ed.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. And there's clearly no cure
Yeah,
because Ed is still undead.
true.
Um,
No cure yet. Maybe they're working on one. Do you think Sean's looking back on it and going, "Well, my mum could have still been around"? Because obviously he gets some value out of his his time spent with Ed. Otherwise, he wouldn't go to the shed.
I think there's a film called The Cured or something like that, which is quite recent, and it's got Ellen Page in it,
Mm.
despite being a very low budget film. And it's about a world where there was a zombie apocalypse and then they found a cure,
Mm.
and the people who were cured of it are being reintroduced into society, but they're shunned because obviously they went around eating people. And so people don't want anything to do with them, and they're worried that their cannibalistic tendencies are going to return.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a good idea, isn't it? Less of a good idea is tying up a zombie in Shaun of the Dead world, possibly.
Really?
Well, we don't see it result in anyone's death.
It would be a set piece in a horror movie if you did, wouldn't it? Like tying up a zombie. If like in any other film, you tie up a zombie.
So now
Yeah.
you're saying it's not how to survive; it's how to make
it
a
become-
movie scene.
But it would, wouldn't it? Right?
Yeah.
In
Right. So they have to
tie
like
up a
pin it
zombie and see
down.
yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got the zombie snapping and snarling at you from the beam you tied it to.
Do you think it would be less of a poignant emotional beat if Shaun said, "No, don't shoot my mum. Let's just tie her up," and then that's just what happened, and the film carried on?
No, we're not called How to Avoid
How to ruin a film?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To avoid emotional beats.
Okay,
and then,
but the shooting doesn't directly lead to anyone's death.
true. Well,
And-
except his mother's.
Yeah, but we don't see that there's any evidence of a cure.
True. True. All right. Well, you've done me, mate, haven't you? So I've just just quit. Replace me on the podcast with someone who knows better.
Well, I mean, this actually ties into it. What your idea was, and it's a bit of a probably an unpopular sentiment, but just sack Ed off
Yeah.
because he's a liability, isn't he? Really, he's a liability in life and in death. He makes it very difficult for them to survive throughout the film because he's either like lazy, not really paying attention, or on his phone attracting the horde.
Incompetent.
Doesn't take the situation seriously.
Does he have any redeeming qualities?
He's a good friend in the sort of movie way, you know. But I don't believe that
he's not. I mean, he's what
not
he offers
evil.
is dependence.
Yeah, he's chaotic neutral, isn't he? He's not evil, but he doesn't do anything to help any of them survive.
Right? Yeah, he's dependent on them, not the other way around.
Yeah,
He's dependent on emotionally on Shaun of the Dead, as his name is in the credits. He it's a codependency thing, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It's a toxic relationship.
but then once he is dead, there's, that is really quite a sinister ending if you think about
Like
it.
keeping a man chained in the shed playing Time Splitters.
Yeah,
Time Splitters?
yeah, it's Time Splitters. Possibly Time Splitters too.
Yeah.
It's quite sinister because when you think about it, they're just chaining up a
Dead
a
man.
weapon. Like he's gonna get out eventually.
Maybe not.
I don't know. In the fullness of time.
Risky business.
Yeah, it is risky business, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't want to sit next to him, would you, and play PlayStation?
If I was reanimated as a zombie, would you keep me in your shed at the bottom of the garden?
No, I'd shoot you
Okay.
before you.
Well, why
turned.
wouldn't you tie me up? And then what if there's a cure?
Yeah, what if, I mean, I don't want to take the chances.
Yeah. I've got another idea.
Go on.
And it ties into something that Liz says earlier on in the film, and that's go to the place with all the fish. The nice place with all the fish, because here's why it's a better place than the Winchester to hide in.
Yeah.
It's probably able to be barricaded just as well as the Winchester. Most restaurants have shutters that you can pull down, especially in London, central London.
Yeah.
A lot of them are in terraces, so there's only one entrance at the front. You can probably pull a big safety shutter down.
Yeah.
There's no direct access via a residence that's on top of the building in most cases in restaurants, unlike the pub, where the pub landlord and his wife come down from upstairs eventually. So you remove that danger. There's fewer entrances because unlike the pub, there's not entrances on all sides of the building, just at the front. There's no fruit machine or jukebox, so that removes...
You don't know, there might be.
In a nice place with all the fish, Joe? I doubt it. And most importantly of all, obviously, there will be ample supplies there.
Fish goes off quite quickly, though.
What, you think they don't have a freezer? Or fridge?
Won't be turned on, it's a power outage.
Yeah, power comes back on and also a fridge remains cold. A normal household fridge remains cold during a power cut for up to 8 hours.
How do you know?
Because I know things.
That sounds weirdly specific.
I've had power cuts in this house.
This house?
Yeah.
When?
When my washing machine started tripping the electrics.
Right. Fair enough. Fixed it?
Yeah, got a new washing machine.
Well, mate.
A triumph.
So what you're saying is during a zombie apocalypse, don't run the washing machine?
No, I'm saying don't hide in a pub because pubs have multiple entrances. They have residences above them. Most of them, I guess not so much now, but back in 2004, most of them didn't offer food.
Yeah.
Even though there's a Breville out back.
They do talk about that. They've got like pork scratchings.
Yeah, they've got pork scratchings and there's a Breville out back where they can make a toasty.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to a nice restaurant, fewer entrances, more food, and probably just as secure. And unlikely to have as many big windows as well.
How do you get in if it's shuttered?
Well, then you're in trouble.
One other point. Do you think it would have been a worse film if he'd said his fried gold plan and then been like, hold on, a better one. Get Liz.
Take a...
Go to Mum's, kill Phil, get Liz, and go to the place with all the fish. A place we haven't seen.
Yeah, maybe that's what happens to the alternate reality Shaun of the Dead crew. Maybe that's where they're going.
Maybe. Okay, so I was thinking about the plight of poor old Pete, mate.
Yeah.
Peter
Serafinowicz, yeah.
Yeah. Whose makeup looks like absolutely terrifying.
Yes. He's a scary man, imposing man anyway, isn't he? Because he's so tall, he's got such a baritone voice.
Once, you know.
Really?
Yeah. I asked him whether I should buy Dark Souls because he was always raving about it. And he was like, yeah.
And did you buy it?
Yeah.
And how did that work out for you?
Not very well.
Yeah.
Hard game. You completed it, haven't you?
Famously, yeah.
Well done, man. You survived in
Thanks.
the game. I didn't. So anyway, think about the plight of poor old Pete. It bit him, doesn't he?
Yeah, on the hand.
And what did he do?
He goes home, goes to bed, and then gets woken up by his flatmates at 4 a.m.
Yeah. And then dies. And then comes back as a zombie. And whatever.
Walks to the Winchester and bites Ed, then gets shot in the head.
Yeah. Now, that's not the NHS guidance. So I googled.
Do we need to explain what the NHS is?
The National Health Service.
Right, in England, yeah.
Right. I don't know who
Britain.
doesn't know what the NHS is. Like, we live in a country where healthcare is free. If you hurt yourself, you just go to the hospital. Not like America where you have to pay for the privilege. Now,
spicy.
Yeah, spicy, mate.
Spicy,
Satire.
innit?
The satire here. Although the Tory government's trying to sell it off, aren't they, mate?
Yeah, probably, mate. Yeah. Brexit.
Yeah. You'll be seeing ads on the website soon, mate.
Yeah.
Anyway, I googled it, and the NHS guidance on their website, very helpful resources available from the NHS.
Does it say run it under a cold tap?
If you've been bitten by an animal or another person,
Yeah.
clean the wound immediately by running warm tap water over it for a couple of minutes.
No wonder Philip died.
It's a good idea to do this even if the skin does not appear to be broken. Encourage the wound to bleed slightly by gently squeezing it unless it's already bleeding freely. If the wound is bleeding heavily, put a clean pad or sterile dressing over it and apply pressure. Now, think of Barbara. Is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
The mum?
Yeah. We're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Which is a quote from Night of the Living Dead.
Right, of course.
Or well, he says, "They're coming to get you, Barbara," about her being scared of bodies coming out of the graves.
Right.
And then immediately afterwards, the zombie apocalypse happens.
That's funny. The other line that I recognised, I think, is "Stop pointing that gun at my mum," which is Reservoir Dogs,
Right.
I think.
Okay.
Which one of the last lines they film, probably the last line they film, is "Stop pointing that gun at my dad."
Right.
You seen it?
What, Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. And it is during the...
The Mexican standoff.
Yeah, exactly. I like the bit in that where it's another editing... We're going off topic here, but it's another like nice editing joke where Shaun keeps saying things and Ed just goes, "Yeah!" like to back him up.
Yeah.
Just like a generic, aggressive, supportive noise.
Yeah. It is good. Anyway, take painkillers if you're in pain. Let's see anyone take. Seek medical advice anyway. And it says when to seek medical advice. So just, if you're Pete in the situation, I don't know, we don't see whether he's run it under the tap or not, or wrapped it in any gauze or taking painkillers. Incidentally, if the bite has severed a body part like a finger or an ear, wash it with tap water, wrap it in clean tissue, and store it in a plastic bag surrounded by ice so it can be transported to the hospital. It may be possible to surgically reattach the body part later on. Now, I did not see anyone picking up David's leg and wrapping it in clean tissue.
Excuse me, Diane does exactly that.
Yeah, but does she wash it in tap water, wrap it in clean tissue, and store it in a plastic bag surrounded by ice so it can be transported to hospital?
One, I don't think finger and leg are the same. Second, we don't know where she's heading. She could be heading to the... She
Straight
knows
to
where the
A&E.
nearest tap is.
When to seek medical advice, mate, because no one seems to do that in the film.
Yeah.
If the bite has broken the skin, which they all appear to,
Yes, very much.
seek immediate medical attention after cleaning the wound. Do not delay seeking help until symptoms of infection appear. So, I mean, by the time the symptoms of infection appear, I've got headache and going to bed. He should be thinking, better.
Some crackheads jumped me. Yeah.
Minor bites can be treated at GP surgery, so you don't even have to go to A&E, mate.
Mm-hmm.
For particularly severe bites, visit A&E. So, no one goes to A&E.
Conflicting advice.
Yeah. But the most important thing to remember is signs of bite may be infected. So if you've got infection, obviously you need to seek medical advice. Redness and swelling around the wound. Now, I don't remember anyone having redness and swelling around the wound.
We don't see swelling. There's a lot of redness, but that is blood.
The wound feels warm and increasingly painful.
We're not certain, but generally the people seem to get colder over time.
Liquid or pus leaks from the wound. Well, blood, lots of it. Sweats and chills. So Philip appears to have that.
Definitely, yeah.
Red streaks extending across the skin from the wound. We don't see that, but there you go. Anyway, get medical help is my point.
Yeah. Well, that applies to anyone who may be listening who's been bitten.
I read on,
Yeah.
and it said that the most common ways that humans bite humans is when you punch someone in the mouth.
Right. I think I've heard this before. Yeah.
You get your hand infected.
And someone catches your fist
Yeah.
in their mouth.
Yes.
And uses your momentum against you to throw you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Don't go punching anyone in their mouths.
No.
I mean, that's not going to be a clean bite, is it? That's going to be like a cut.
A nick. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nasty, though. Imagine punching someone and getting a massive cut on your hand from their teeth.
Yeah.
Doesn't bear thinking about.
I'd punch them so hard their teeth would come out anyway.
Nice one, mate. That's pretty good. Yeah. You were in that MMA fight that happened the other day,
Well,
weren't you?
you see that?
The fastest knockout ever in history.
Fucking hell. What a gump.
Yeah, he did look a bit like you, actually.
Did he?
Yeah.
What way? Because he was running at someone knocking him out. Yeah, I know.
Pardon?
Because he knocked the guy out.
No, because he was being knocked out and he
Yeah.
had long hair and he was white.
Yeah, all those things apply to me.
If you haven't seen it, look up, just type in fastest UFC knockout in history. It's quite funny. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. That was Shaun of the Dead. If you would like to get in touch, the email address is howtosurviveshow@gmail.com. Joe, have we had any emails?
This is from Joe.
Hello,
says,
Joe.
Hi, mate.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. I've been listening to your podcast almost non-stop on my long work shifts for about 3 weeks now, and I've really gotten a kick out of your killer commentary. Anyway, for years I've heard about this movie called Sleepaway Camp, and I finally watched it. Since you're big fans of Friday the 13th, that's
loose definition of the word fan.
I thought I would suggest this marvellous film, full of teens who we grew to know and love that really did die too soon. I'm really sure you haven't seen it. I'm pretty sure you haven't seen it, and it has a twist at the end to rival Friday the 13th's attempts at shock. Thank you for all your hard work, Joe.
Do you send a lot of emails to yourself? Or?
Yeah, very well done.
That's very kind, Joe, other Joe. Thank you very much for your email.
This is from Hannah, who has been a long-time listener. You may remember Hannah from the early days of the podcast, one of the very earliest emailers.
Yes, I do.
This
Hello,
isn't
Hannah.
my wife under a pseudonym. This is a different Hannah.
What a coincidence.
Long-time listener. Can't quite remember how I found the pod, but I've been listening since the second episode. Just wanted to chime in on the merch debate. Would absolutely love a How to Survive tote bag. So there you go, mate.
Okay.
So add that to your list of things to get ready.
Yeah, well, things may be in the works that may lead to merchandise.
Yeah.
In the near future.
Yeah, mate. And a Russian doll idea set somewhere in that. I've ruined the metaphor. Just keep an eye out. Maybe we'll do it. With regard to How to Survive, I'd love to see an episode on the new Godzilla movie. This definitely falls into the trashy end of the spectrum of what you look at.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many How to Survive perspectives here. The civilians, the main characters, even the kaiju. Additionally, whilst the film itself isn't especially good, the broader themes of the Godzilla franchise have a fair amount of meat for discussion. Thanks and best wishes.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your email, Hannah.
Did we didn't do Godzilla, did we?
No, we didn't do Godzilla.
We saw it like the month before we started.
I think it was the year before. It came out in 2014 and we started the podcast in 2015. But yes, we went to see Godzilla together and it was dreadful. I hated it.
Yeah.
And we watched King Kong, King of the Monsters. No, King Kong, Skull Island.
Yeah.
And that was a
flawed, but okay.
3-star movie, maybe 2.5-star movie. King of the Monsters, I think I haven't seen it. I don't have a huge interest in seeing it, but we'll get to it, I'm sure. Maybe we could pair it with the original Godzilla, which is a very interesting film and ripe for discussion.
Another email here from Lewis, who says, "Hey guys, a long-time listener. You mentioned Shaun of the Dead in previous episodes, and I'd love to hear you guys review it. It's one of my favourites, and it's ripe for potential survivalist scrutiny. Plus, it's one of the few films that treads comedy and zombie horror line and actually produces an excellent result. Regards, Lewis." Well, Lewis, we'll try and get to it one of these days.
Well, you just stole his notes, didn't you? Thank you very much, Lewis.
Stephen has emailed in and said, "I really enjoy the show. You should get more views." Yeah, well, he's a YouTube listener.
Yeah.
Whereas you view the stuff you listen to on YouTube would.
We went through a phase, didn't we, of uploading the podcast rigorously every day to try and catch up for the backlog, which was successful, I think. Then you offered to take over the uploading and sorting duties, right?
Any day now, mate.
How has that gone?
This Stephen has emailed, and he says, "Have you considered doing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?"
I think I have a distant memory of someone recommending it.
Yeah.
So maybe we will watch it.
Put it on the list. It's a good high concept film.
Yeah. What's it about?
Honey. Dylan has been in touch, who is talking about a movie, mate, called Bait from 2012.
Okay.
It's a movie where people are trapped, based on our discussion on Train to Busan. After a tsunami floods a supermarket, a ragtag group of people are trapped inside with a shark and must try a series of badly thought out ideas to escape.
Excellent.
I think watching the movie is a great time. But if you're looking for a worse film, might I also recommend a personal favourite, Zombeavers. A group of teenagers go to a riverside cabin for some horror movie cliche fun when their cabin is swarmed by a colony of zombie beavers. I'm also going to buck the trend and not recommend you watch Hostel. It's not a good franchise, and I don't see what there is to say about how to survive it. Well, finally, the voice of reason.
Yeah, Bait is an interesting one because it reminds me of a film that's coming out this year called Crawl, which is a Kia Scodelario vehicle, and that is about a girl trapped in a father and daughter trapped in a flooded house with alligators. So that would be a very apt pairing with Bait. So maybe we'll have a look into
What's
that.
it called? Switch. Bait and Switch.
Any more emails?
Doesn't make any sense.
Any more emails?
Yeah, some, but whatever. We'll do them next week.
Okay, I've got a couple of tweets.
Go on.
So this first one from Rigor Mortis.
Here we are.
Thanks, Rigor.
See, I get like I have to read out names that like I have to struggle to pronounce, and you just get stupid phrases.
He says, "Hey guys, love the show. I'm fascinated by movies that have interesting ideas but fail to fully live up to them. In that line of thinking, I'd like to suggest Mirrors from 2008, which stars Kiefer Sutherland.
Great,
I believe.
He's in all the best films.
And Stitches from 2012, which, like, in the distant depths of my mind, I think is a clown movie."
Really?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Stitches.
Yeah, Stitches. Yeah, maybe.
And Laughing Stitches, right?
Right.
Both films are interesting, flawed, and challenging to survive. So thanks for that, Rigor Mortis. And we've had a tweet from Dan, who says, he says, currently on a How to Survive pod binge, Cabin Fever is one of my top fives. And I don't know whether he means what. Well, he says, and yes, I agree, it is a terrible movie. And I don't know whether he means it's one of his top 5 How to Survives, in which case that's very kind of you. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Or if he means it's one of his top 5 horror movies, in which case, do not listen again. You are not wanted. That's at How to Survive Pod if you would like to tweet in. To anyone who has DM'd us, slid into our DMs over the years on Twitter, I haven't looked at them in about 2.5 years.
Really?
But did look recently, and next week I'll be reading them out. So if you
really?
Yeah. So if you've been ignored up until now, I can only apologise. And I'll get to you next week.
I love on this podcast. We've done it so long, we've had so many different ideas.
Yeah.
Like the website, right?
Yeah.
Like this weird shit that we just start and then just forget. And then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, there's people like we had like comments on something called like Stitcher. Is that a thing?
Right, yeah. It's a podcast platform, isn't it?
Didn't know we were on it, but we got comments on there. I'm like,
right.
On SoundCloud. I don't know. We're on supposed to like.
Yeah.
It's a fun little
YouTube
thing.
as well now, obviously.
Yeah.
Get all sorts of maniacs
Oh
commenting.
my god, the YouTube comments are like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
That is like, the depths of society. Oh god. Maybe we'll do a special podcast where we just read out YouTube comments. It'll be about 4 hours long.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't seem to think Jigsaw did anything wrong.
He's the misunderstood hero of the piece.
Yeah, and talking of misunderstood heroes, next week the laughs continue with Tucker and Dale versus Evil as we tackle another horror comedy. So thank you very much for listening to How to Survive Shaun of the Dead. An hour of quality How to Survive chat, Joe. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yep.
How about that for a slice of fried gold?
You made it up, mate. That's not in the film.